Hello, Divine Ones. Welcome back to the Home Apothecary course. In this section, in this video, we're going to be going over herbal actions and how to recognize them, how to classify plants, and use them as part of your herbal practice and home herbalism practice. If you're tuning into this as the free class that we're giving out to our mailing list and our social media, welcome, welcome. My name is Laura. I'm on behalf of House of Origins Apothecary. I own this company with my business partner, Maz, and together we are herbalists. We have a deep passion and interest in obviously the natural world, mysticism, hermetics, divination, and the mystical and magical uses of plant medicine. We're really passionate about the intersections of medicine, science, bodies, mysticism, spirituality, and how all of those belief systems can meld into one to form a really diverse, all-encompassing philosophy of life and healing. You know, both of us have had quite a long healing journey with our own personal ailments that has really led us to the plant path, the spiritual path, and the path of mysticism. So we're really excited to share some of the things that we have learned and help you become a herbalist and have your home apothecary. So the herbal actions, we're going to be going over 10 today. 10 of the more main ones, more common ones that you're going to see sometimes on herbal packaging. You may see it on herbal blog posts or other herbalists talking about herbs in this way where they'll say, X herb has X action, which means that it will treat, X pathology or X symptomology in the body, mind, or spirit. So the herbal action words is a classification system based on traditional North American and European herbalism that reflects the observed outcomes of using plants as treatment for various ailments. So sometimes it describes the specific mechanism of action, but oftentimes the action words are describing the observed outcomes. So we'll get more into that and illustrate that with some examples as we get further into this class. Some things to know about action words and herbal actions is plants are so much more diverse than their actions. And we use action words to help us understand the herb and help us understand what systems of the body they're acting on. And it also helps us understand the mechanism of action, but we have to realize that a herb has many different actions, and oftentimes people approach herbalism the same way they approach medicine and like allopathic medicine, where they're looking for X herb for X condition. And herbs don't really work like that. Herbs are much more of, the plant has a personality, the plant has a constitution, the plant will have astrological and planetary correspondences, and so does the person. Like the person you're treating, whether it's yourself or another, has a constitution. The person has a personality. The person can't be distilled down to the mechanistic functions of the body. So when we're talking about using plants, say, for example, anti-inflammatory, I don't just want an anti-inflammatory herb that's going to help me with pain. I want an anti-inflammatory herb that has a specific mechanism of action that helps inflammation, that also suits my constitution and my personality. And the way that I think about this as a herbalist is the herbs have personalities and so do the humans. And I need to match the two so that I make sure that they're a good fit and that they're going to get along with each other, and that the person I'm trying to match the herb with is going to have a really beneficial relationship with that plant. And if you try to give a person a herb that isn't a constitutional or elemental match for them, it might actually exacerbate the problem or make it worse, even though the herb you're using might have an action that you want to use or might seem like it will be helpful. One good example of this would be if I'm using a really, really strong bitter herb with somebody who has digestive problems and a lot of coldness in their digestion. I can know that they need a bitter herb to increase digestive secretions, But if I'm not careful in choosing that bitter herb and I give them something cold, like a really cold bitter, and they're already experiencing coldness in their digestion, I can make that problem worse. So I need to know the other actions of the herb and the diverse array of effects that it's going to have on the physiology of a human to accurately match a herb to their condition. So in that example, I would reach for a warming bitter and something that I know is bitter that's also warming that won't actually exacerbate the condition that the person is dealing with. And with herbs too, they have many actions. So just like humans, we're very complex, so are herbs. Like we have thousands of different molecules in us. We have thousands of different compounds, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, things that we need to function as a whole. And herbs are kind of similar in that way, where they have hundreds of different compounds and molecules that make up the herb and make up the medicine as a whole. And that really differs from pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical medicine, where in pharmaceuticals, we see there's a lot of single constituent extractions or single molecule extractions that they're using in a pharmaceutical medicine to treat the person. So that's one reason why I really like using plants as medicine, and why I feel like the whole plant extracts are a very well-rounded, holistic approach to treatment, is because of the diversity of molecular compounds in a whole herb extract versus a standardized extract, where you're taking like one molecule out of the array of molecules that exist in a herb and you're isolating that and giving it as a medicine. Sometimes that is useful for certain herbs or certain constituents and conditions where you really do want that isolated standardized extract. But for the home herbalist and for most people who are going to be watching this class and benefiting from this information, whole herb extracts are the best and most likely what you are going to be using. And the nice thing about whole herb extracts too is you really get the entire broad range of herbal actions from that plant because you're intaking all of the constituents of that plant. And just a note too, when you're beginning to apply herbs to your own body, is often we'll be like, oh, I need this effect. I'm looking for a herb that has this effect. Awesome, great. And sometimes we can get like tunnel vision and blinders a little bit with that kind of mentality. So what I like to do when I'm using herbs is I'm like, okay, I'm looking for a herb with a carminative effect. I need a carminative right now. Maybe I'm having some bloating or indigestion and I could really benefit from a carminative. So I'm not only going to look at herbs that are carminative and choose one. And when I choose one, I'm going to look at all the other actions that that herb has outside of carminative to make sure that those herbal actions are also a match for me and what I'm going through, because we'll see in some examples, and especially if you take the home herbalist course, we go into this like really, really in depth and really help you learn how to choose herbal remedies, learn the organ systems, learn the elements and energetics of each of the organ systems and constitutional medicine, so that you learn the skills of discernment and you're able to differentiate between the different actions and find the one that's best suited to you. So when I need a carminative, I will find a herb that has that action, and then I'll look at all the other actions and make sure that those are a match for me. And you'll see pretty quickly and clearly when you start studying herbs, you'll be like, oh, there's warming carminatives, there's cooling carminatives, there's more stimulating ones, and there's more relaxing ones. There's carminatives that are nervines, there's carminatives that are bitter. And from there, I can see what other actions that this plant has that will also be beneficial to me. And I can also see if there's any actions that won't be beneficial to me. Like maybe I'm needing a carminative and I'm also having some anxiety. So I will choose a Nervine carminative. If I'm needing a carminative and I'm also having some indigestion and maybe some constipation, I might choose a bitter carminative to help aid that process, get my digestive juices and secretions flowing as well. So it really is a bit of an art and a finessing in choosing the best herb for you and understanding the herbal actions and the diversity of herbal actions that are contained within one plant. All right, so there is a PDF that goes along with this class, and I'm going to be working off of the PDF and going over the actions and the definitions of the action words and exactly what they're doing and what's happening in the body. So either open that up and have it out with you so you can follow along with me and you can read the words and get some of the spellings of those action words, and especially the herbal medicines and the Latin names. We'll be using those as well in this class. And you can either print it off or just like have it up on your screen and be writing notes with it as well. So for this class, we're going to be going over the 10, what we think is the most common herbs, what you're most likely to be coming across and seeing in your herbal exploration. So as in the previous example, I was using the term carminative. So that's our first one. And a carminative is a herb that generally acts on the digestive system, helping us expel gas or bloating and improving motility. And motility means how stool travels through the digestive system. And it also has to do with timing. So if you have a fast motility, things will move through you really quickly. If you have a slow motility, things will take a little while longer from food to bowel movement, basically. Generally, these herbs are a little bit warming because of their volatile oil content. As we learned in our elemental lesson, volatile oils correspond to the fire element and are really dispersive. So when we have an accumulation of gas that needs somewhere to go, it really helps to have that fire of transformation and the dispersive energy of volatile oils to help move that gas out of the intestines and out of the digestive system. Typically, the gas will travel one way or the other. So they travel up or down. And the nice thing about carminatives is they're not really going to make you like burp or fart like that. They're going to help dissipate the gas so that you don't do those things. Just a little disclaimer there. And when we're using carminative herbs with volatile oils, typically those volatile oils are anti-inflammatory in some way and antispasmodic. So they're working on the musculature of the intestines to help peristalsis and the movement of gas and solids in the intestines, and helping sometimes bloating and gas can be accompanied with pain, like gas pain in the intestines sometimes comes as like a sharp shooting pain. The antispasmodic and anti-inflammatory action of the carminative herbs is really going to help dissipate that as well. And some of our herbal examples for carminatives is chamomile. So chamomile is a bitter carminative. We have lemon balm. Lemon balm is a cooling carminative with an affinity to the nervous system. So people that have like a anxiety gut connection will really benefit from lemon balm. We have ginger, which is really anti-inflammatory to the digestive system, and it has really potent anti-spasmodic effects too. So if you get any kind of cramping, ginger is on your side. We have cinnamon, which is a nice warming carminative. If there's any coldness in the digestive tract, cinnamon will really help warm it up. And we also have fennel. Right, moving on to our next action word is nervine. So a nervine is a herb that acts on the nervous system, bringing relaxation and helps us manage stress and increase neurological function in the body and the brain. So with nervines, there are 4 different categories of nervines because they range in their effects and their mechanism of action. So we have nerve tonics, nerve relaxants, nerve hypnotics, and nerve stimulants. And depending on the state of your nervous system, you will likely need a different type of nervine. So a really classic example is a nervine stimulant, which most of us reach for in the morning. Something caffeinated would be a nervine stimulant. So like coffee, cacao, yohimbe, rhodiola, or ginsengs. Those are nervine stimulants where they're stimulating alertness and wakefulness and nervous system function. A lot of these herbs are also circulatory stimulants. So they will stimulate blood flow to the brain and the central nervous system. We have nerve tonics. So nerve tonics are kind of similar to food type plants and have like a restoring, rebuilding, a really gentle effect on the nervous system, and they're not going to be stimulating or sedating. So I would give a nerve tonic to somebody who maybe is like burnt out, maybe they have some adrenal fatigue, maybe they're the kind of person who burns the candle at both ends. You know, if someone has a lot of fire or air in their constitution, that might come out through their nervous system, and they could really benefit from nerve tonics. So some examples of that are milky oat, lion's mane, reishi, lavender, and lemon balm. And already we can see with lemon balm, where it falls into the category of carminative and nervine, we can see how we're starting to build a picture of the personality of lemon balm and how it's working in multiple systems of the body, and how the diverse constituent profile of lemon balm has multiple applications. And next we're moving on to Nervine relaxants. So these are, I'm going to actually talk about Nervine relaxants and Nervine hypnotics together. So a relaxant is, as it sounds, relaxing. It's not going to be extremely sedating. And our Nervine hypnotics are the herbs that are sedating, that are going to depress central nervous system function and help us get into like a more sleepy state. And so some examples of nerve relaxants are wood betony, blue vervain, lemon balm again, chamomile again, and tulsi, holy basil. Some nerve hypnotics that are actually going to bring forth feelings of tiredness and sedation and help us get to sleep are passion flower, kava kava, Jamaican dogwood, wild lettuce, and anemone. And a note on nerve hypnotics as well: in small and drop doses, I do find them really useful for extreme anxiety and panic attacks without being super sedating. So when the nervous system is really, really activated and in overdrive, we have, I've never read this in a book, but I just observed this in my own being and my clients as well. When we're in a state of extreme nervous system overdrive, we actually have a bit less sensitivity to nerve hypnotics, and they're not going to make us sleepy when we're so stressed and in overdrive and in panic attack. They're really just going to suppress the heart rate, calm ourselves down, stimulate parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system states, and help us get out of that panic mode. Our formula with House of Origins called Unwind has some nerve relaxants and nerve hypnotics in it, and is fabulous for anxiety in drop doses, and in larger doses is amazing for sleep disorders and insomnia. If you're someone who really needs a good night's sleep, get yourself a bottle of Unwind. If you're someone who gets anxiety or panic attacks or elevated heart rate with anxiety, get yourself a bottle of Unwind. You know, it's one of those ones that I carry with me basically at all times. Like every bag has a bottle of Unwind. Every time I go on vacation, that's the formula I bring, hands down, every time. All right, moving right along here to adaptogen. So adaptogens help the body adapt to stress in a very basic sense of the word. There is no concrete mechanism of action established for adaptogens, because they're all the herbs that fall into the category of adaptogen have a really, really different mechanism of action. So generally, they help the body adapt to stress. More specifically, they often work on the level of hormones, and the family of adaptogens of herbal medicine was discovered by the Soviets in the 60s, and they were looking for plants and substances that were performance enhancing for the military. So you can just imagine the field of study and the experimentation that was happening on humans and plants when they discovered this family of plants that had this action. So generally, how they work is they reinforce the body's non-specific capacity to endure stressors. They also modulate the stress response by curbing blood sugar spikes and creating a bit of a plateau in the glucose spikes. So as part of the stress response, we get a spike of glucose and then a fall of glucose. And what adaptogens help us do is they like have more of a gradual up and a plateau and then a more gradual down. So we're not experiencing that like up, down of glucose, which has some pretty catastrophic health effects if you are in a prolonged state of stress and you're experiencing glucose spikes. Almost every single major disease that is, in the top 10 leading causes of death in North America can be traced back to some kind of irregularity with glucose and insulin resistance. So adaptogens are really, really key players in helping us through those experiences and helping us regulate our nervous system and our blood sugar and the full body systemic effects of stress. So part of how adaptogens work is they enhance our ability to mobilize glucose from the liver and transform glycogen, the stored form of glucose, into free glucose that's circulating around the bloodstream that the body can use for energy. And it also gives cells a greater ability to use that glucose. So it just makes your body able to release energy and use the energy much easier during a state of stress, which is pretty great if you ask me. Some adaptogens have immunostimulatory actions, and some adaptogens will act on the pituitary gonadal hormonal axis. So in herbalism, we'll talk a lot about kind of the hormone cascade that goes from like brain basically downwards, depending on what system. So in the pituitary gonadal, that is more talking about our hormones and reproductive health. And some adaptogens are specifically suited to that hormonal axis. So something like shatavari or ashwagandha will be adaptogens like that. And something to remember with adaptogens that not a lot of herbalists talk about, but this is like my adaptogen rant, basically, is I consider them, I believe this actually came from Sean Donahue, who was one of my teachers at Pacific Rim College. He talks about adaptogens as energy credit cards. So they help us adapt to stress, right? And it's like you can put money on your credit card, you can spend that money, but you're going to have to pay it back at some point. Like you can't just like keep spending and spending and spending money on that credit card with like never paying it back. And adaptogens are like that too, where they're like, okay, you can have this energy now. I'll help you, respond to this stressful situation, maybe this stressful period in your life, this, period of healing in your life. I'll help you and give you more energy for this period, but at some point you're actually going to have to rest, and you can't dose on adaptogens and like just push through stress indefinitely. Like you're going to have to rest and stop taking adaptogens and actually recuperate your organism. So think of them as energy credit cards, and think of them as something that you can use for periods of time. It really varies on the periods of time that I suggest. And I would say a general rule of thumb is like a few weeks up to 6 months. And after 6 months, if there isn't like a regulation of the stress response and the stress cycle, I'm much more likely to treat with something else or use another method. Possibly Nervines would be a really great alternative. And a lot of adaptogens, herbs also have Nervine qualities too, like borage, centella, tulsi, all adaptogens, all Nervines as well. So another thing with adaptogens is I like to cycle them and not take the same adaptogen indefinitely, or even for that 6 months. If I'm giving somebody an adaptogen for 6 months, I might give them the same one, maybe a more mild one like reishi, super appropriate to use for 6 months straight. Maybe something like one of the ginsengs I would like to use for a shorter amount of time because it is a little more stimulating than something like reishi. And I find with adaptogens as well, they vary in terms of their stimulating effects. Like, our ginsengs and our rhodiola, that's quite a stimulating adaptogen, which can be really good and really useful for some people, but I would probably cycle the more stimulating ones with some more relaxing and restorative and building ones throughout that treatment plan or treatment time. Right, moving swiftly along here, we have bitter. So bitter is one of the action words that really corresponds directly with the mechanism of action and the constituent profile of the plant. So the bitter action is also the bitter principle. And the bitter principle describes a set of constituents or molecules that are in a plant that have a really specific effect on the body. So when we take a bitter herb, it's best that we actually taste it. And I know it sucks. Like the medicine is bitter, but the healing is sweet. That's what they say. So why we want to taste it is we have bitter receptors on our tongue, and that sends a cascading effect that ripples through the digestive system, and it lets your digestive system know that it needs to start creating bile and digestive enzymes. It helps with stomach acid creation as well. And that signals to the body and the nervous system and the digestive organs that, oh, we're going to eat something and we need to get ready with all our digestive juices so that we can really efficiently break down and absorb the nutrients that are coming our way. So oftentimes we're not going to get the full effect of bitter herbs unless we taste them. Now, you will still get some effect if you were to like encapsulate a bitter herb and take it as a capsule. Like it's still going to work as a medicine, but you will get stronger effects if you actually taste the plant and you use something like a tincture. I don't recommend teas or aqueous extracts for bitter herbs because it's much easier to take, 5 milliliters of a tincture than it is to, drink an entire cup like this of a really bitter medicine. And as far as compliance goes, people are much more compliant with a smaller dosage, and you're much more likely to get the medicine you need with a smaller dosage in a short period of time of an unpleasant taste. Oftentimes people who really need bitter herbs will actually enjoy the taste of it. So that's something to look out for as well. As you're learning about herbs, building your apothecary and following your intuition with this, if there are certain flavors of herbs that are just like so good to you, like often it comes with bitter and sour or like acidic, people will be like, oh my God, I really love that. Like it feels so good in my body. That is probably a good indication that you actually need that medicine, you need that flavor, that herbal action, and the constituents that are within that herb that have those actions. With bitters, we do have some contraindications to think about because it has a strongly stimulating effect on the liver, the gallbladder, the stomach, pancreas, and basically the cascade of all the internal organs. It can be really stimulating to the uterus as well. So all bitter herbs are contraindicated in pregnancy, especially on the first trimester, because it can trigger a period or miscarriage or like an abortifacient effect. These herbs are also contraindicated in any kind of intestinal obstruction, kidney stones, ulcers, and gastritis, and really painful periods. And that's because really painful periods are cold and bitters are also really cold. So if it has a bitter taste, it's likely that it's going to have a cooling effect. There are some warming bitters like Angelica, hops. Those are warming bitters, which are good to know. It's really good to know what your warming bitters are so that when you encounter somebody who has a really cold constitution, that you can get the bitter action while warming them up and not making them colder. And then, so they're contraindicated in intestinal obstruction and kidney stones, ulcers and gastritis, because it can be really irritating to those conditions, and it can also cause some really serious side effects. If there's any kind of obstruction in the digestive organs and the organs of elimination, stimulating them can cause serious injury. So we really don't want to do that. And a good rule of thumb too is like always check the contraindications for the herbs that you're using and the other actions, like I was saying before. So you really make sure that the herb that you're taking is going to be good for you in its entirety. All right, our next herbal action is Diaphoretic. So a diaphoretic is something that stimulates peripheral circulation and helps release heat from the body via circulation. So often we use diaphoretics to break a fever and encourage the natural febrile mechanism in the human body. So we're assisting the natural function of it. And the function of a fever is really great, actually. Our bodies heat up to basically kill the pathogen from the inside and push it out through the extremities so that it doesn't go deeper into the body. And we use diaphoretics and circulatory stimulants to assist that natural heat production in the body that happens with a fever. Of course, always watch your fever. If it gets above a certain point, like seek medical attention. But until it gets there, it is a really good idea to actually encourage the fever and not inhibit the fever with something like Tylenol or something that's going to kill the febrile mechanism, because that might actually make you sicker in the long run. And some really good examples of diaphoretics are yarrow, one of my favorite herbs of all time. If you are just starting your herbal journey, yarrow is one of the herbs that you have to have in your apothecary. It is applicable for so many different things. Yeah, my love for yarrow is undying. All right, so we have yarrow as a diaphoretic, elderflower, peppermint, and angelica, archangelica. Our next herbal action is spasmolytic. So spasmolytic is another word for antispasmodic, and it acts on the musculature of the body and soothes contraction, tension, and spasm and cramping. So any kind of muscle cramp is technically a muscle spasm, and it helps, sorry about that. It's most commonly used for cramping and tension. It calms the autonomic nervous system, but it doesn't calm or sedate or alter the central nervous system. So the key feature with that is it's not going to be sedating like some of our Nervine hypnotics that we talked about. It's going to act on the more peripheral nervous system and the junctions of the nervous system and the musculature, because that is typically where spasm and cramping and tension is happening. And this is really great because you get like physical relaxation, but you don't get like the mind central nervous system relaxation. We're going to use spasmolytic herbs for things like menstrual cramps, any kind of like neck and shoulder tension, digestive cramping. Often a lot of our carminatives are antispasmodic, spasmolytic as well, to work on the smooth muscle of the digestive tract. So let's get into some examples of spasmolytic. We have cramp bark, very obvious, named for its spasmolytic effect. We have wild yam, which is a pretty strong and bitter spasmolytic, used a lot for dysmenorrhea and painful periods. Ginger, so a nice warming spasmolytic. It's going to bring heat and vitality. A lot of times spasm is a result of cold and cold conditions because, the energetics of cold is tight, constricted, and spasm happens via constriction and tension. So it is really helpful to warm up the organism, bring fresh blood flow, oxygenation, circulation, like ginger provides, to the areas and to the tissues. We have kava kava, and we have passion flower. Our next herbal action is astringent. So astringency is like a tightening, tonifying action. It decreases the space between cells and making the bond between cells stronger, and it increases tissue strength and integrity. So I like to kind of use the representation with my hands where like a healthy cell junction, they're like this. They're like, maybe they're a bit like this. So they're hugging, they're tight. There's like little spaces in there that allows for the exchange of nutrients, minerals, electrolytes and fluids in a healthy way. So this is like really strong and flexible. When we're talking about tissues of the body, we don't want them to be too tight or brittle because then they'll break. And with astringents, what they help with is when the cells are like this and they need to be brought back into proper tension. Astringents are more useful when tissues are lax and they lack tone, and astringents bring in more tone and tonality. Also really useful for any type of like loose, soggy, flabby, prolapsed tissues benefit from astringents. It really helps keep the tissues where they're supposed to be, keep the organs where they're supposed to be. If our ligaments are too loose, if we have connective tissue disorders where maybe like your joints are too flexible, you could benefit from some kind of astringent that just helps tone the whole organism. Our next herbal action is a nutritive, alterative. Our next herbal action is alterative. So an alterative promotes the elimination of toxins and metabolic byproducts by increasing the function of organs of elimination. Often alterative herbs are referred to as blood cleansing and helping cleaning the blood. And how they clean the blood is they help transport toxins and metabolic wastes to their proper channels of elimination and organs of elimination, primarily the intestines and the kidneys. Secondary organs of elimination are the lungs and the skin. So alterative herbs are primarily working by bringing metabolic byproducts and toxins into the bloodstream to be eliminated via the liver, then the digestive system, or the kidneys, and then the urination. And our last herbal action of our top 10 herbal actions is nutritive tonic. So this is a family of herbs that are the intersection between like food plants and medicine plants. Pretty sure it was Paracelsus that said, let food be thy medicine, and nutritive tonics are the perfect example of that because they are very neutral in constitution, meaning they're not going to be too hot, too cold, too drying, or too wet. And they're very suitable for many different types of constitutions and elemental makeups of the individual. So it improves the vitality through nutrition, vitamin, and mineral content. And some examples of some nutritive herbs are stinging nettle, raspberry leaf, oat straw, milky oats, goji berries, rose hips, and horsetail. So almost all of these plants can be eaten and used in fairly high amounts too. You'll find with the nutritive tonic plants that they have a really broad range of therapeutic effect, and you can dose quite high with them. And in some conditions, it is really helpful to do that to really amplify and elevate the nutritional status of you or someone in your life, you know, as you're helping them out with all of your newfound herbal knowledge. So these are our top 10 herbal actions. And you have this PDF, you have your herbal examples. From here, if you're doing the free class, there's a few paths moving forward. Number one is to sign up for our home apothecary herbalist training, where you're going to learn so much about elemental philosophy, how to identify pathology and imbalance in your own body. We're doing, I think, 10 to 20 more herbal actions. So if you liked this class and you want to know more, we're going to be doing a lot more herbal actions in the Home Herbalist course. This is just like a little teaser and taster of that. And we're also going into a lot more in-depth monographs of the herbs, how to formulate a formula, how to make different types of medicine and medicinal preparations, when to use them, why you would use them, and the differences between herbal preparations of the same plant. So the Home Herbalist course is really great for people who are learning about herbalism, want to build their home apothecary, and want to start making medicine for themselves, their family, and their community. So thank you so much for watching, and we're looking forward to learning more with you drop us a comment or an email if you have any questions about any of the content here. We love to talk about herbs, and we're super happy to chat herbs anytime. Bye.